Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you back to the Dynamic Decisions podcast, where we explore the strategies that drive successful decision making in the world of business. Why? Because the best decisions come from great conversations. I'm your host, Teasha Cable, CEO of C Model Data. And today we have a dynamic leader in revenue operations, strategy, and cloud partnerships. Her name is Kathryn. She's the head of revenue operations and strategy at Orchid Security. As a founding member of the revenue operations team, Kathryn works closely with the CRO to operationalize the go-to-market strategy. She is architecting systems that really, truly drive revenue growth and position their company for hyper growth. So I want to thank Kathryn for being here. Thank you so much. I'm excited about what we're about to talk about. First, though, would you start off by telling us all about Orchid Security? Tell us about what the company does, how it does it, and all about you, the things that I didn't get a chance to share.
So thanks for having me, and I appreciate that wonderful intro. I'll add a little bit of color. So as you mentioned, I'm the head of revenue operations and strategy at Orchid Security. We are what I'm going to say, a disruptor in the identity space. So we are changing the way that companies approach their identity and access management. So super excited to be at another company with this exciting tech. But basically, as a founding member of the revenue operations team, I do work closely with our CRO as well as our leadership team to really operationalize, all of our go-to-market strategy. I took a little bit of a roundabout journey to get here. I actually started my career in events and hospitality, and a layoff in 2018 served as a bit of a redirection in the sense I got a field marketing role at a Series B startup. And since then, I've held different roles across demand generation, digital marketing, channels and alliances, operations, of course, across 4 different early and earlier stage companies. So I've seen lots of different parts of the journey from various sides of the aisle or from the team. So yeah, I'm excited to be here, and let's dive in.
Thank you so much. Okay. So my first question is really about in the space that you're in identity security, where the threat landscape really evolves daily and these compliance requirements are shifting constantly. How do you balance the need for operational predictability with the agility to pivot whenever there are market dynamics that are changing? Is there a decision-making framework that comes up for you when forces conflict?
So there's a couple of things here. Because I do have there's some challenges that I think of when I think of, actually particularly when I think of like scaling companies like where we are right now, but then also how I approach decision making. So we'll start off with the first piece, is like what's the biggest operational challenge that I see. So I think the biggest one is balancing your structure with flexibility. And so like by that I mean not over engineering the process, but also doing things at the right time. Like a big first milestone for a new company like an Orchid is like choosing when to formalize, like when are we moving our forecasts or our accounts, or when are we getting out of spreadsheets and we're moving that into something more formal, like a Salesforce or HubSpot, like an automation tool or a formal CRM, that kind of thing, right? And then what makes it even more complicated when it's an earlier stage company is that you're dealing with constant reprioritization. So it's like at Orchid, biggest challenge has been, okay, we need to put guardrails in place. We need to have process to scale, but I don't want us to lose momentum. And you're honestly making a lot of these decisions in real time as you're kind of receiving data. So it's like there's just a lot flying around. And really that's a challenge with a lot of companies. It's just there's a lot happening. How I approach this decision making, well, so it's like early days, it's a lot of instinct, it's a lot of gut over perfect data. And a lot of times you don't even have data if it's like really early days. Get a little further on, but you're getting more of that cross-functional input. So you're bringing, sales leaders, marketing, whoever in, getting feedback and making decisions as a group. And then later, it's about balancing the first two, but then also considering, how does this affect our people? So because now a decision A doesn't just mean, we made decision A and it resulted in Y. It's we made decision A and it resulted in X, Y, and Z because the team's bigger, there's more going on. And so you have to ask your things like, well, what's the downstream effect on the team? Or like, how is this going to affect our partner ecosystem? Or how is this going to affect our tech stack? There's just a lot more components to it.
Yeah. Kind of thinking about your partnership program. So your Cloud Alliance program operates in this really, what I will call an increasingly saturated partnership ecosystem. And I know that at Wiz, when you were there, you achieved like 65% partner driven revenue in year one, which is incredible, especially because most SaaS companies struggle to even get 30%. Beyond the typical co-sell motions, what unconventional alliance strategies are you deploying to really cut through the noise and really create genuine value for partners who are bombarded with partnership requests?
Sure. And this was actually it was a learning process at Wiz too. But I will say it was like a lot of times I get asked, what was the secret sauce at Wiz? Like, how did you guys do this? How did you have this really successful partner program? And the first answer I always give is the people. And I really mean that. We had an amazing team with an absolutely incredible amount of expertise and experience. But the other thing was we made a decision as a company very early on, and we stayed aligned on that. And by that decision, I mean, we decided that we were going to focus on channel as our tool to expand our reach and kind of, scale your sales team. Because honestly, you keep reading about like layoffs in the news in tech, and it's overhiring. And so the channel is an excellent way to scale that team without actually having to bring on additional headcount. So we decided and we committed that once we got the infrastructure in place and everybody enabled, that like we were going to work with and transact as close to 100% as possible with partners. And then once we committed to that, it informed what and how we measured, not only by each team, but like individual contributor from like objectives or like KPI perspective. So each chosen metric is to ensure alignment with that desired outcome. So like take channel account manager, the early days, we're looking at things like, well, how many partners have you vetted and onboarded? Like why these partners, justification and whatnot. And then later it's, okay, well, which opportunities, how many opportunities, how much revenue is being sourced by the partners that you're focusing on? And then even later still, okay, how are those partners, specific partners, affecting how fast a deal is coming in? How quick is it going? And so having these types of metrics that change as the company matures, but also align with that ultimate end goal. You have everybody rowing in the same direction once you've committed. It's actually surprising how much you can achieve. And at Wiz, for example, with our channel and alliances, we knew what we wanted to do, and we just made sure that everybody was rowing in that direction. It was always an undercurrent of overall planning. Makes sense.
Yeah. You know what else? It feels like it fits with what is happening right now in your market. There's this unprecedented consolidation with the much larger players. They're acquiring the point solutions, but it doesn't mean that the demand isn't still there. So I like that you guys are taking this shifting landscape and thinking about the really difficult decisions. Who are you going to prioritize? Which partners, which alliances? That's good. I like hearing. And then I love sharing with our audience that these are the places, these are where decisions get made. These are the types of areas where you start thinking about how to prioritize because resources are actually finite. So this is a really great example of that. Okay, so I love revenue operations because I was a revenue operations professional. So this is my space. Revenue operations does require making trade-offs often between short-term pipeline velocity and long-term strategic positioning, as an example. So in a mission critical space like identity security, where customer trust is super important, how do you navigate decisions where aggressive growth tactics might compromise the authentic relationships that drive sustainable revenue?
It's an excellent question. And honestly, it's something that we are actively working through right now as a really young company. One of the first things that I heard when I came on board here was, do we have our messaging right? Are we communicating it correctly? Is it resonating with our customers? Are we focused too much on this one feature? And this one feature, are we calling it a term that maybe has a different meaning to the space than it does to us? So there's a lot of questions you start to ask yourself. To give you a little bit of background here with Orchid specifically, Orchid as a product was actually born out of an extensive study that was done by Team 8. And it's because identity, they basically interviewed a bunch of CISOs and said, what is the thing that's been keeping you up at night? What's the problem that hasn't been solved? Identity just kept coming up. It was, no one can agree on what the solution is here. It's fragmented. Basically, it's ripe for disruption. And so we actually knew there was a really good product market fit before the product even existed, which is great. So you don't have to ask yourself, do people need this thing? It's just more like, how do I get them to know that it exists? Especially because as a product itself today, there is nothing else like it currently on the market. I know that will change like tomorrow, but it didn't exist because it couldn't exist a few years ago. Where technology is today with like AI, For example, the product that we have just wasn't a thing that we could have had a few years ago. And so it's a brand new type of product. It's doing a new thing in a new way. And it's well, how do you communicate that to the broader masses in a way that makes sense to them? So right now, I'd say it's probably more about how we're approaching it versus having a specific answer, which is you have to be listening. Like we have Gong. We listen to a ton of recordings, adding filters for intent or phrases, keywords, and whatnot to really get an understanding of how are your customers talking about things, and then how are they talking about them not only in any given meeting, but like when in the sales process. What causes somebody to go to a POV or not? What causes somebody to request a demo? Like, so there's that question at every part of that journey. And so you really have to be looking at all of that. And that also means you have to be measuring all of that.
Well, come on, looking and measuring. Let's go. So listening, looking, measuring. I got it. New framework alert. That's great. So, okay, you've led distributed teams across multiple hypergrowth companies in highly competitive markets. When pressure mounts, whether from investors, board members, or competitive threats, how do you maintain your team's psychological safety while still driving the aggressive performance metrics that most SaaS companies demand?
So I laugh because we had a saying. I learned it at Wiz. Our CRO used to say it. He used to say pressure is a privilege. And he's right. And I don't want that to be like in a toxic positivity way. It is a privilege.
Yes,
To have that kind of pressure means that you're in demand. It means you're doing something right. And that is definitely a blessing and a privilege, especially in today's world.
I love it.
This goes back to one of the biggest challenges that I think, and we're facing it right now as we go into this next stage as a company, is it really matters like who's on your team and setting expectations. Like you are going to be joining a startup. Like, do you know what you're getting yourself into? Because I have seen it over and over again where like that's not communicated properly, and people leave after a handful of months because I didn't really know what I was signing up for. So I say that because yes, we do want to protect our people from harm. As a leader, you shield them from the worst of it. That's part of what being a leader is. But you also want to make sure you have the right people in the trenches with you that not only can do it, but want to be there doing it. I'm a glutton for punishment in a way. I love the controlled chaos of startups. I find it very invigorating. Some people find it very exhausting. So it's you got to make sure you have the right people. And then obviously you got to make sure you're checking in with your people too. It's really important to have communication lines open. You want to have weekly department meetings. You want to have regular check-ins, like one-on-ones with your direct reports. And then as an overall company, you want to make sure that you're having at least quarterly check-ins as a whole where the CEO or whoever comes and tells, this is what we're doing as a company this quarter, and so that nobody's surprised. People function better when they have expectations. It's not easy being in a startup. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say it's sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns. You will never have a really tough day. You will have them, and they may be often.
Right. I would say every other.
So it's just like you gotta have your person you can vent to.
Right.
Keep on that self-care, and then if you're somebody who's in leadership, like check in with your people, communicate. It's really like putting as much support in place as you can versus trying to put up a wall, which is impossible. Palliative care, you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, I actually agree. Pressure is a privilege. And so it's all about how you're going to manage your way through it. So that's really great advice for our audience. Would you tell us a little bit about, stay on this human piece. So RevOps, for example, sits really at the intersection of sales, marketing, and product. I'd say finance as well. And it's often mediating these conflicting priorities and resource allocation disputes. Would you walk us through maybe a specific decision where you had to choose between these competing departmental type needs? How do you handle the human dynamics of disappointing one stakeholder to serve the broader business objective?
Again, we're dealing with it right now. This happens when everybody wants a tool that they want. And then, you have to consider, okay, but what tools touch which tools and sync with what? And so it becomes a larger, more complicated question if you do this correctly. And it is about balancing expectations. But again, if you set the expectations and are honest and transparent and check in along the way, people can't hold it against you. Like you explain the why, you give context. Context is king. You give them context and you let them, and so they understand the why. That really comes down to just how you keep teams aligned in general, is making sure that you are communicating what's happening, but not only what's happening, but why. And then you have a plan in place. And obviously people understand that that can change because priorities constantly change. But knowing they were heard, seeing that it's there up on the plan, that it's going to happen, is usually enough. And I'm not saying it's always perfect and people do get disappointed. We joke as operations, maybe you don't joke, but I do, that like we're a department of no. It's true. I say a lot of no to a lot of people for a lot of things, but I do listen to them and hear, okay, well, what more than you need this tool or this, what is it you're trying to achieve here? What's the end goal? Like what pain are you solving for? Kind of like we do for our customers when we're selling to them. Like what are you solving for here? Because if I can, I obviously want to help them come up with a solution. And maybe there's an alternative that we already have they didn't know about. Or maybe there's a stopgap, something that will work for now that will take away their pain until we can get something more permanent in place or justify the spend. So it's really about communication and setting expectations, I think, most of all.
I think that what you're saying is really in this era, it's all about to get to the sustainable performance, I guess, in this case, where you're really maximizing. You have to honor both the outcomes that you're trying to achieve and the human well-being. There will not be success if you're unable to do that. And what are the ways? I think your idea around context is queen is absolutely is absolutely correct. I think that the more transparent an organization becomes on the whys, this is part of what C Model's mission is to ensure that that is easy enough to do, then I think the better off people will end up being, even though there will always be hard choices. There will always be difficulty in choosing one thing over the other. Fantastic. Yeah, go ahead. Did you want to add something to that? No? All right. Okay. So we're going to go into the decision-making persona assessment. You ready? All right. So I'm going to explore your decision-making style through a persona assessment. I'll present to you 4 different approaches to complex decisions. And after each one of them, you're going to tell me how much that questioning style that I use resonates with your actual decision-making process. You've got a scale of 0 to 100% for each one. However, across all 4, you only get a total of 100%. Okay? So we'll start with the first one. The first one is called the feeler. It's a values-driven leader. So this persona prioritizes alignment with core mission and considers the ripple effects of decisions on all customers, on all employees, and the broader community. So here's the question. When evaluating a high-stakes revenue initiative or strategic partnership, I find myself asking, beyond the financial metrics, what are the human consequences of this decision? If we pursue this aggressive growth strategy, will our customer success team be overwhelmed, leading to churn that ultimately undermines trust? Will this partnership enhance our customer security posture authentically? Or are we creating dependency relationships that could backfire? Even when investors push for rapid expansion, I need to feel confident that we're building something that genuinely improves how organizations protect their most critical assets. So how much does approaching high stakes decisions through that values and impact lens resonate with you?
And I can only it has to be altogether 100%.
Altogether across all 4, you'll get 100%.
I would say it's definitely a big percentage for that one because I actually referenced that's kind of how I approach and think about things later on in my decision making is what is the overall impact and this is possible. So I would say that's at least 30%, 33%.
You want 30 or 33?
Let's do 33.
33%. That's because you'd like me to figure out all this math. Or you'll do it yourself. You're keeping track as well. All right.
I got this. I got my pen ready.
Let's go. Here we go. Here's the next one. The next one is called the planner. It's a strategic visionary. So this persona thinks in systems and scenarios, always considering multiple second and third order effects while anticipating how current decisions will compound over time. So when making strategic decisions about revenue operations or alliance architecture, I ask myself, what are the cascading implications of this choice across multiple time horizons and market scenarios? If identity regulations tighten significantly, will our current partner mix position us advantageously or create vulnerabilities? How will AI and automation reshape both the threat landscape and our customers' operational needs over the next decade? I need to map out how today's alliance decisions will either enhance or constrain our strategic optionality when the market inevitably shifts in ways that we cannot fully predict. How much does that systems thinking, scenario planning approach to questioning resonate with your decision making?
I always joke I'm a scenarios person. I really am. It's like you give me something and it's like, how many ways can this go well or wrong? I'm going to say 30% for that.
30%. So that's feeler, that's planner. Ready for the next one? All right, here we go. The next one is called the counter. It's the challenger of assumptions. So this persona instinctively questions industry orthodoxies and conventional wisdom, often finding breakthrough opportunities by identifying what others take for granted. So when evaluating revenue strategies or partnership models, I find myself asking, what fundamental assumptions about our market dynamics are we accepting without sufficient scrutiny? While everyone focuses on cloud marketplace revenue, are we missing opportunities in edge computing or hybrid environments? What if the traditional partner tier structures actually limit innovation rather than enabling it? I tend to examine why certain approaches become best practices and whether our unique market position allows us to rewrite the rules rather than optimize within existing constraints. Have a little fun with that one.
I would say 15%.
Give me a little why on your 15% there.
So I do think of those things. Those are like, it's not that it doesn't enter my realm of thinking, but I would say when you ask me a question or if I start to consider something, the first two are usually where my head goes, just as far as like where I start to think about things. I usually do that. Just, yeah. Now I'm curious, like what's the last one? Because maybe it'll change my answer. Maybe it will affect what I'm saying here.
I don't know. Let's take a look. Usually RevOps folks love this one. Okay, this one is called the data driver. It's an evidence-based decision maker. So this persona demands quantitative validation and seeks to minimize decision-making bias through rigorous analysis and measurable outcomes. So before committing to strategic decisions about RevOps or alliances, I ask myself, what leading and lagging indicators will definitely prove or disprove this hypothesis? Beyond vanity metrics like partnership announcements, what data points, deal velocity by partner tier, customer lifetime value correlation with partner source deals, or competitive displacement rates in partner-driven opportunities will give us unambiguous feedback? I want to establish measurement frameworks before we act so we can iterate based on evidence rather than intuition or rather than stakeholder pressure. How much does this evidence-driven, measurement-focused approach to questioning guide your strategic decisions?
I'm going to maintain my answers. So I think that left us with what, like 22%
22.
or whatever?
Yep, 22%.
Here's my reasoning behind that. Like, listen, data is really important and I do love data, and you can't manage what you're not measuring. So I love a good dashboard reporting, making sure we have fields that are, I love all that. The problem is when you're at a company like Orchid at this stage, a lot of times you don't have good data or you're getting it in real time. And so how can you build a framework on something that you don't have anything to build it on? So this is why I approach, at least where I am today, like, is a 70% rule. So we move forward when we have 70% confidence versus waiting for that 90 being too slow. And that helps a little bit. So then you see that, yeah, data is important, but we're not solely relying on data or waiting for that data to come in order to make these decisions, because frankly, we don't have time to do that. If it was later stage company, maybe these ratios would change a little bit, because you're at more established company, do you have to be as focused on 1 and 2? Because you probably have at least some stuff in place that there's some givens where you don't have to think about every possible scenario. But, this last piece here. Anyway, that's how I approach, at least now. So yeah, I think that's good answers.
sticking with it. 33% feeler, 30% planner, 15% counter, and 22% data driver. All right. Thank you so much. That's just my favorite thing to do. I love to go through that process with people. Typically, you learn a little something about the depths of your decision making. Oh, I am much more of a feeler. You probably already knew it, but it's nice to say it in words. So that was awesome. So you have architected revenue ops and alliance programs that don't just drive growth, but create sustainable competitive advantage. If you could share one counterintuitive insight with leaders who are trying to balance aggressive growth targets with authentic value creation, what would that be?
So I know this is going to sound a little like I'm tooting operations horn here. It's a hill I'm going to die on because I think if you don't have things in place, you're going to have a really hard time with your business. So basically, you don't want to overbuild too early. But like one of my favorite resources, I'll plug that, is the High Growth Handbook. And there's a part in the intro where they talk about there's some stuff that's, quote unquote, easiest to put aside in the beginning if you have a really good product and a like killer sales engine, right? You're taking things like, your HR and your marketing and whatever. I also apply that to sales and marketing operations. I've seen it over and over and over again. The only difference is how bad is the damage, and that's based on how old the company is. Even here at Orchid, we are literally a company that's been selling for less than a year. We have a Salesforce instance that's like a few months old, and we're already doing hours of rework because there wasn't somebody here on staff to say, hey, this is how we sell. These are some things to think about. You should build it this way. And then I was thinking, contractor, you hire a contractor to have your back and give you expertise. But I say this to you, which is there is a very big difference between knowing how to do something and knowing why you're doing something and why it's being built.
Do y'all hear me snapping my fingers right now? Come on. Yes.
My advice to founders to bring all that together is this: operations, and like revenue operations specifically. Like, this isn't just CRM maintenance. It's not reporting and fancy dashboards. It's creation and management of your strategic marketing and sales infrastructure. It's literally the glue that holds all of this together, and you should really invest in it early. Like invest in when you're investing in product and sales. I'm telling you, it will make an absolutely incredible world of difference. Is a great example. We had a absolutely stellar revenue operations team pretty much in place from day one, even before I started, and I was employee 65. So like very early, and that just let our team run fast and be agile. It was absolutely incredible. It was quite the ride. I know that seems counterintuitive. Oh, we'll put off operations. We can handle it for now. I am telling you, this will come back to bite you. I'm telling you, just get somebody that you trust. You need a business partner that can help you think strategically about how you want to go to market and what's in place to make that.
Thank you so much for that. And strategy should always be tied to execution. That's why it's so important to have it so early. So I think that that's great. Fantastic advice. And then finally, what's one decision-making practice that you've developed that helps you stay grounded in human impact while you're operating in this high pressure world of enterprise SaaS solutions?
I keep saying, but it's communication. Communication is key. If the team doesn't know what's going on and you're not talking about it and you're not regularly meeting, it starts to get really crazy. And you have things like duplicated efforts, people doing the same thing, people not knowing what other people are working on. So it creates a mess. So and I think that's why I always seem to have a role similar to what I have at every company, even if it's in a different. It's like I'm always that person who's the point that connects all the other people, because I have what I do seems to touch what everyone else is doing. And so it allows me that unique perspective to see, well, I know so-and-so is working on such and such. And so like, oh, let me connect them with so-and-so over here because yada, yada, yada. Not every company has somebody like me or somebody who's good at that type of thing. So it's really important to have communication. And that's why I very much stress having that, and then having a central place to document and have these conversations so that everyone remains on the same page as we not only get through the decision process, but then ultimately will we execute.
Fantastic. So, Kathryn, thank you so much for sharing such thoughtful insights on RevOps and strategic decision-making. I really do appreciate this approach that you have of balancing operational vigor with human-centered leadership, because it offers a refreshing perspective, especially in these industries today where everyone's obsessed with growth at any cost. So can you tell our listeners where they can learn more about you and more about Orchid Security?
Yes, absolutely. So I do have a LinkedIn. You can come find me. Feel free to connect, reach out. I love networking, and with my peers and hearing what's going on with you and sharing best practices. You can check out Orchid at orchid.security. Super exciting tech. We're actually going to be at a conference next week down in Austin. So I'm excited to actually get out in the field, wear my field marketing cap, and say hi to people. Those are the two places. I'm not really all over the place, but I'm pretty easy to find if you come looking for me. So.
Fantastic. And to our listeners, we want to thank you for tuning in. Remember, the best decisions come from great conversations. If this episode sparked any new thinking about how you approach revenue strategy or human-centered leadership, please do subscribe, rate, and share it with your network. Let's keep the conversations going on social media using Dynamic Decisions Podcast. And until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep leading with purpose.